Welcome back to Apocalypse and Genesis. This video is for Adrift 690 and Amanda 522, both of whom recently pointed to the South Pole star Canopus as worthy of a look. Following their lead, I stumbled deep into a new rabbit hole, which of course led to another set of dates in our near future. What I am discovering appeared an open secret to the ancients, that this era in which we find ourselves would be a perilous one. And of all the generations of humanity who might have paid attention, ours is the one who should have studied the prophets as if our very lives depended on it. You and I have lived to the end of what philosophers called the greatest year, a mystery that fooled the disciples of Jesus who were off by 2,000 years in their predictions, a mystery that bamboozled the poets of the Romans who mistakenly thought Caesar Augustus would ring in the Golden Age. Well, I'm hoping you have a few minutes to spare because I think it's the biggest story of the millennium. The Bible and the Rig Veda, two of the world's premier religious texts, begins with fire. Agni is the first word of the Hindus. Anu was the first word of the Sumerians. Aish was probably the first word of the Hebrews. The Aleph and the Shin, the eagle and the lion that began and are about to judge the world. 4 Ezra 12. The quote from the Baal cycle shows that what they were tracking was a movable first of Aries, first of Virgo event. That is the trajectory of the Nibiru system through our solar system. And their passage is what affects our global weather and will affect our ecliptic. It might also be the best time for an influx of extraterrestrial humans if you're looking for those. I read a book by a guy named Maximilien de Lafayette suggesting we're supposed to see extra dimensional boxcars in this time called Bobs sent by the Anunnaki. Remote viewers of the Farsight Institute some years back said we would jump into those. I read another report saying a dozen stargates would be open on a schedule linked to the old monolithic sites. And the Jaguar priest of Tizimin of the Mayans said ornaments from heaven would be dropping down. So it's no wonder we're having congressional hearings on UAPs all of a sudden. Religious people will look for their rapture before they're called away by the Pied Piper during the panic. Above, you have the day the sun blew up in Orion, the day God declared, "Let there be light." What the ancients had to say about these creations that happen on the quarter precession is that there's a pole shift where the constellations suddenly shift a quarter turn to the right, soon after they spent 6,537 years doing the very same thing slowly. So you have stones showing a constellation making 90-degree turns, and usually it's Orion or Aries, but a scorpion attacking a bull or an archer attacking a lion would carry basically the same message. The Ohuelans, Sasanians, and Etruscans all agreed the Zodiac will be on the move. And the Toltec type says we get into trouble at the corners. The sun is a blowout near the archangels, the royal stars. Here's a Hebrew version of the story. At the corners of the zodiac, the cusps of Pisces, Aquarius, Sagittarius, Scorpio, Virgo, Leo, and Gemini, Taurus, they stationed archangels to supervise the proceedings. And I wish I could read the labels, but I can't. The archangels can be seen representing the royal stars, and you'll see various estimates as to what angel was associated with which royal star. On the zodiac above, I posted what Bing AI was able to figure out. However, a friend who studied the issue told me Michael was the watcher of the east at Aldebaran, Gabriel the watcher of the south at Fomalhaut, Raphael the watcher of the north at Regulus, and Uriel the watcher of the west at Antares, which is basically the way things are right now. All of which were secondary to Helios, the central representation of God with 4 horses of the apocalypse. For Rome, he was the Sol Invictus, the one who rose from the dead 4 times a precession. Here's another way of looking at the 4 great seasons of the precession. You might find that passage from the Enuma Elish of interest. Mesopotamian and Egyptian legends and imagery make an appearance in the Bible, even as their gods are conflated and their chronologies confused. I remember back in the day, my grandfather had a Seth Thomas mantle clock with the Westminster chimes. And every hour on the quarter hour, there was a magic bell sound resonating throughout the house. Well, the ancients set their reminder for every 6,537 years or so. They said it was when the hand of Orion replaced Pegasus. Leo jumped Taurus. Sagittarius shot a gazelle. Orion chased a scorpion. Hercules attacked a lion. A heron descended from the north, and all hell broke loose. All manner of stories to be looked at as a celestial incursion leading to pole shift of 90 or 180 degrees. Your Bible speaks of a new heaven and a new earth coming. What did you think it meant? The Maori said there is a time of the end in which Canopus and Vega rise together. The shocker for us is that they can change sides of the sky or the planet in a question of hours, unrelated to the seasons of the Earth or the normal rotation of the planet. Imagine Earth passing close to a greater celestial object, such that our season of the sun and the time of day are irrelevant. It would be like that. If at the same time we pass the galactic sheet, or what Jan Thomas called the null zone of the interplanetary magnetic field, there would be absolutely nothing preventing Earth's heavy poles of ice from suddenly lurching toward the equator under centrifugal force. The very second an interloper celestial object gave us a nudge. From our viewpoint, half the visible sky would fall, as in Revelation 12. In a few hours, Draco would change sides with the hand of Orion or the beast of Leo. And imagine the great sacrifice as oceans traveling 1,000 miles per hour retained their trajectory and the land shifted beneath them. The ancients tried to warn us of coming plasma physics, calling it the lightning weapon of Zeus, their Mardukian Christ, now in Aries, the house of the Lamb. But a Birkeland current was hard to discuss in languages of the ancients. The end of the world meant very different things to different people. To a Jew or Christian, it could be messianic. But remember, the Moshiach was to bring war and judgment and fire this time. He could be glorious and he could be terrible. As during the Exodus, it could be a time to starve or it could be a time to rise up against oppression. Mostly, cosmic challenges were a time to get with the program if you haven't already repented of this foolish life. The Romans and Greeks, following the lead of the Jews, saw the great gods and their festivals as an excuse for revelry. While great sacrifices might be called for, Adonai, Bacchus, Dionysus, and Sabi were seen as by the pagans as the same god. Plutarch found it significant that the Jewish high priest wore a mitre and the gilded skin of a hind, remembering our approaching death of Pisces at the first of Aries. I positioned the map legend backwards so you can see how strange our world has become. Once upon a time, Aquarius was in the north as the god of the sun, and at his foot was Leo. This month, the world is upside down and backward from that. Perhaps now it's time to set things right. Around this time, the sky is coming up on a quarter precession since the sun micronovaed in this direction, and we were to expect the Aries dragon to appear between Jupiter and Saturn. First to emerge was Thoth, the dark lord Lucifer falling across the sun with a shadow of 3 days, to be followed by a great fire from the south, the rise of the phoenix. If you can, check out the mythologies and various words for hell. Near as I can tell, it's an exciting time on Earth about to affect us, and it precedes the 7 worst years of history, followed by paradise on Earth. The city of Canopus was found in a place you normally wouldn't expect. The city, named for the southern pole star, was at the far northern end of the Nile River. In fact, the ancient city has been discovered underwater near Nelson Island in the Bay of Abu Qir. I think the far north location is a hint that our skies get turned around. I think I've mentioned before that we're rapidly approaching the time when the old religions and myths are going to make sense, a leading story of which is the anticipated arrival of an avatar. Well, imagine both Jesus Christ and the devil showing up with a fleet of advanced spacecraft and the armies of heaven and hell. Or maybe it's just a bunch of meteors. Can you imagine the United Nations suing for peace? I'm not sure the word is even in their vocabulary list anymore. But it's time either to pay the empire that set up our Babylonian system or declare independence from them and join the galactic community. We can't continue what we've been doing. And maybe what screwed us up was our dualistic vision with its nationalisms. The little Persian seal suggests our sky is about to go kilter. The ecliptic stands up with Saturn and Nibiru suddenly coming into view above Virgo, which would associate the red star of Marduk, the son of Enki, with the Southern Cross and with Canopus. Your religion was celestial the whole time. Remember the Jewish mosaic with Helios or Apollo driving a quadriga of horses? Same idea on the Roman coin. They were celebrating the Sothic cycle of the Egyptians, or maybe one of the zodiacal ages. Here's a list of some of our proposed avatars. If you get the chance, look at The World's 16 Crucified Saviors by Kiersey Graves. They tend to have similar stories in zodiacal terms, though you probably place more trust in the Bible version if that's what you grew up on. The problem with that story is that it's got you condemning each other, which was never ever the point. I think Paul once summarized the scriptures saying, all the law is fulfilled in one word, even this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. One of the things about this time is that it can lead to adjustments in time. The ancients could remember the year when it was only 360 days long, and they had to add 5 intercalary days. And then they had to add another extra day every 4 years. And you probably thought Julius Caesar and his astronomers invented it, but not so. The Egyptians did. If Amos 7 is serious about the plumb line being the beginning of the end, and Jesus is serious in the book of Revelation, then I would expect huge things by the end of this year, more specifically starting around September 18th to 22nd. I'm told the turtle piece showing it starts at Virgo is Toltec. The Carthaginian mosaic on the right had pagan origins, though it sure seems appropriate to both Christianity and to this time of the alignment of the Zodiac. As I said, our time was a pretty open secret of the ancients. Surprising that priests tried to keep it from us. Here on the left, you have that triple alignment again, this time at the gate of Hattusa in Turkey. The representation of the coming Dark Lord was a green cube at the temple. And to me, the cube signifies what happens to our zodiac in these times. Add Canopus at the top to the royal stars at the sides, Polaris to the bottom, and you have 6 sides of Earth magnetically rolling the dice as Nibiru and Nemesis pass by. I believe for the Egyptians, the passage of the blue-green celestial object was the serpent or Urias from the crown of the Sphinx. And the crown of the Sphinx signified the Leo sun during the quarter precession alignment. The face may belong to Aquarius in about 3.5 years of bouncing around. But the cube is a mystery. The ancients show it falling across the sun in a huge eclipse. But I wonder, could it be the object our system of stars was revolving around? Psalms 118:22, Job 38:6, Isaiah 28:16, Jeremiah 51:26. Maybe there's a mystery there. I haven't figured it out. Another reference to Canopus brought up the death of Osiris and the rise of Seth, the replacement of Egyptian religion with that of the Jews. Osiris was remembered with the canopic jars where Egyptians stored one's essential organs for the afterlife. Double eagle of the Byzantines at Mistro is also about this time when Jupiter and Saturn at Aquarius bring us the phoenix rising from the ashes in resurrection. You may recall the dead will arise again, as must we one day. Christians are still walking around looking for two human beings who spew fire from their mouths. Meanwhile, half of Canada and the Northwest are on fire, along with Australia and the Amazon. In my interpretation of what's going on, there are two celestial objects we need to get a bead on. One a planet headed in this direction, and one a small star about to pop up from behind the sun like a morning star. What did Peter Pan used to say? Second star to the right and straight on till morning. Here's my best attempt to catch a glimpse. A few days ago, it was at Omicron 1 in Cancer, and appears to have been something the Navy was tracking. But if you recall Zechariah Sitchin, he said Nibiru has at least one inhabited planet that regarded us as a bunch of renegade colonists. So if the Congress and the military are acting a bit nervous, don't be afraid. We're just living through what Jesus said the end would look like, wars and rumors of wars. He added, See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Here's that isosceles trapezoid again. That was supposed to be a sign late next month. I just find it ironic. We've been passing it around on dollar bills for ages, referring to the new beginning for a couple hundred years. Now it's upon us with this alignment of one Virgo and one Aries, in which a new avatar is to come. In Isaiah 11:6, the prophet says, A child shall lead them. The imagery brings to mind a pole shift before we enter the new house of God. Perhaps he was alluding to one of the fabled little people. In ancient Irish history, the people of Anu of the Sumerians, the Tuatha De Danann, were the fairy folk who disappeared. Perhaps they're coming back to help us remake this place. Genesis 28:21. Well, the Dark Lord was a hero to some, notably the Olmec of early Mexico. The were-jaguar was their Christ. And later peoples would switch the sexes of the god and the sacrifice, but I think the stories were always about this time when Nemesis and Nibiru chase each other across the heavens until the world falls, and civilization again has to rise on the other side of the event. Here I assumed that the secret of Canopus and the cross on the giant Olmec mask is the secret of Nibiru, the red star that comes from the far south upon the end of the procession. If it aligns with Canopus and Sirius when they go off, or if Nibiru aligns with Sirius and Betelgeuse when they go off, well, then the Mars volcanoes are just quite the coincidence. I've seen that 1 and 3 divots design on ancient stones. The Mississippian piece might be the most important rock I ever saw, and it's for sale on eBay, but I'll leave it alone as my last temptation. Nibiru meets Nemesis above the heads of Jupiter and Saturn, standing like Aries and Capricorn, flanking the Aries dragon at Aquarius, both standing upon the Southern Cross, gracing northern skies. Dante said that hasn't happened since the days of Adam and Eve, who may have been a cipher for the red planet in his, or the red star in his planet, or maybe, two stars about to nova again. Who knows? The mythology appears in other cultures as well. For example, here you have the Persian and Hindu story of the eye. On the right, you have an Ohuelan piece. Do you suppose the stars above and below Seth are Vega and Canopus, or Nibiru and Nemesis? Note that Seth, god of the underworld, is holding on to Crux, the Southern Cross. So again, there's a reversal in our skies, and then the chain of life resumes. If you get the chance to do a bit of reading, I included some material from Thomas Carlyle on the significance of Canopus to the Magi. Perhaps it's the big blue star behind the little red one when we finally see the eye of God. He also had some nice things to say about these stones we've been looking at for a couple of years, looking for clues of the end that is the beginning. Again, the end of this year was significant to the ancients. It wasn't just the Hebrews that thought God is about to change the rules for living down here. The Taino owl on the left has Jupiter and the first of Aries at the bottom of the sky as we are about to encounter them. And it shows two huge objects dropping on Leo Virgo. Something similar happened 6,500 years ago when the axe that fell on Orion was Auriga, falling from above the Taurus horizon. The Taino death mask is a recurring theme of the solar superflare or micronova that happens in this time. Remember, scientists are expecting an X-ray flare in the X700 to X1000 class, which would, totally bring down the grid for years. We don't have a spare grid's worth of transformers sitting in warehouses, so we'd pretty much have to start over. The word of creation for the Sumerians was Anu, so I spelled it with Egyptian hieroglyph and got the Holy Trinity. Father was the raven or heron. The serpent or dragon was Mom, the peacemaker between heron and phoenix, the old and the new sky gods. Yahweh and Adonai, about to reveal the mystery of how their children unite. I would recommend you get into your scriptures to figure out how you feel about sticking around or getting out. Because the same Bible that hints at rapture says the righteous don't have to leave, meaning, I think, that a conscious decision needs to be made before we go on. Well, hopefully that wasn't all just confusion. Note that we have reached the point of your religions and history and science and all of this wonderful progress we've witnessed, and even greater things were accomplished by our ancestors thousands of years ago. But now it's time for another generation of history. A great number of us will continue on to mix with the newcomers, just as Homo sapiens sapiens absorbed Neanderthal, just as Neanderthal had absorbed Erectus and Denisovans and habilis into the gene pool. Now our celestial brethren are due, as Virgil described 2,000 years ago. Now Kali Yuga and her degenerate offspring end. Now Kalki, Michael, and the Christ and their golden progeny descend. So don't freak out, no matter what you see, no matter what you hear. Just keep a cool head and see what you can do to round up a bit of real food and clean water in our time remaining before the storm. Because as in the days of Exodus, there will be hunger and bitter herbs in the wilderness. Be part of the remnant if you can. Shema bless you and keep you now and forever. Take care.